I have a proposition for you, me, and the listenership of this podcast.
Okay, cool.
So we're doing this delve into Italian. We've been doing a lot of Italian jokes. I finished off last week's episode with over-the-top Italian stereotype accent to sign off the show.
Yeah.
And that begs some, we have to think very deep about some questions about
it's
ourselves.
Hurtful.
Well, the bigger question, I think, is if we were the Mario brothers,
okay,
which one of us would be Mario and which one would be Luigi?
Oh, that's so easy.
Is it?
That's so easy to me.
What?
Do you not think... Why do you think it's hard? Because here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say you're Mario and I'm Luigi.
I guess you're kind of... it's been a while since I've seen you in person, but you are kind of like tall, skinny, right?
I mean, no, but I'm like average male height in the United States.
That means I think I'm taller than you then.
Yeah? How tall are you?
Every time I go to get my height done, I get it in centimeters, but I always forget it. But then they say that I am somewhere between... But depending upon who I've talked to, they've said 6 foot and 6'1".
Oh yeah, then you're taller than me. How did I not know that?
Haunted Mansion, though, you would definitely be more in the Haunted Mansion territory.
Yeah,
that's very Scooby-Doo-esque.
Very Scooby-Doo-esque. Yeah, so I would be the Luigi.
That's okay. Luigi is the one that obviously has the most sex. So
yeah.
I mean, Mario tries the hardest, but there's always another castle.
Is he the one that just gets cake? Is that video
he's the one
game?
that just gets cake. He works so hard to get cake, while Luigi, like behind the scenes, Luigi gets fucking cake in like the Zoomer sense. Luigi eats cake.
Yeah, he does in the sexual way.
Yeah,
if you hear what we're saying, and what we are saying is that's me.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
You are Luigi, the one who eats cake.
That's true.
This went some places.
If you know anything about me, I ooze sexuality.
I mean, you do the unbuttoning of the shirt thing.
I unbutton my shirt a lot. I do like flirting with cute guys. I'll be honest with you there. Does Luigi do that? I actually am not up to speed on the lore of the Mario Brothers sexuality.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Luigi fucks. I don't think he's very like discriminate.
I think he just kind of goes for it. I think he's just sort of that vibe where it's like, if we're both feeling it,
skeleton turtle.
It doesn't matter if we're both feeling it in this moment, baby. Let's do it.
Yeah, him, Koopa Troopa, whatever, the ghost things, Boo.
Sure, Boo.
Probably Kirby once or twice in a crossover type thing.
Yeah, I mean, he feels like he would get you comfortable. You know, he would get you to be like, oh no, I'm at ease here. I feel good about this. Mario
has main character syndrome, which means like he's all about himself, right?
Well, yeah, he's always like, it's a me.
It's a me. Yeah. So
it's always about, we know Mario, it's you.
And he's played by Chris Pratt, and
that's really what it would be. That's the question. It's not who's Mario and who's Luigi. It's who's regular Mario and who's Chris Pratt Mario.
Nobody wants to be Chris Pratt Mario. Not even Chris Pratt. I don't know what Hollywood producer he saw run over a child, but all those roles he seems to be getting is just uncanny. So podcast?
Oh yeah, we should start recording now.
Yeah, okay.
All right, and oh my god, this is so embarrassing. I've been recording this whole time. Should I edit this out or?
I don't know. You're going on vacation soon. It sounds like a lot of work. Don't worry about that.
Hey, this is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens.
I love that you always start like you were listening to a podcast. I don't know if what you thought you were listening to, but this is a podcast.
I think in my head I'm like pausing to see if you wanted to take over the intro, and then when you don't, I'm like, all right, I'll do it. This is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, where we look at alien theories and pseudo-archaeology and ancient astronaut theory and things like that nature. And then we use it to talk about real world history behind cool places and people and cultures and things, while also mostly debunking a lot of alien stuff. But not always, but most of the time we do that. And I'm the person, my name is Scott Nicewander. I'm the person on this show. Well, that number one is most like Luigi, I think, is what we figured out. But really, it's up to you, listener, to decide on Twitter who's who. But also, I'm the person who really, I know nothing. I look to my older brother Mario for guidance. In most things.
It's a me, Tristan Johnson. I am your art history professor today. I've come in with my carousel slide reel. I'm going to talk in a very dry voice about Neoplatonism. And just next slide, please.
We're continuing the series that we started last week. We didn't intend for it to be 2 parts, but
we goofed off for like an hour.
We just kept talking, and then we had to break it up. We're talking about not ancient, but like medieval sort of Renaissance sort of style paintings that may or may not depict aliens in them. So go listen to the last episode to sort of catch up to where we're at. If you want a quick refresher, mostly it's just our brains thinking things are faces and or clouds that are supposed to be like angels and not aliens. Yep. That's sort of where we're at.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, we're going to get a little bit more of that, but we're talking about the very well-trod ground, a very, very big part of the ancient astronaut theory that like a lot of medieval and Renaissance paintings that have iconographic symbols that we don't understand today, or that a person who's not an art historian doesn't understand today, right, and say, well, that's an alien.
I don't know what it is, so it's definitely an alien.
And also just doing over-the-top Italian accents to enjoy it, because we don't get to do Italy. And also, you can listen to the last episode to learn about Mamma Mia's Law, so that this is all okay.
Yeah, Mamma Mia's Law says doing all the Italian accents as jokes is fine.
If your country did colonization, it's okay to make fun of it.
That's right.
Yep.
Tristan, do your best American accent.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, let's go to America. Let's talk about Nostra Signora della Neve.
I don't think I've ever heard an American say those words before, but I like where your head's at. Let's talk about it.
So this is, the next painting we've got on our list is Nostra Signora della Neve, which I think means Our Lady of the Neve.
Sure.
So if you were to direct your attention to this slide, please. This is an interesting one. Definitely needs a little bit of to someone who doesn't know what's going on. There's definitely something interesting. How does this look to you?
Yeah,
paint us a thing with your thought fossils.
I will do that. And once again, we're going to tweet out all these images at Probs Not Aliens on Twitter, so go follow us there. But if I can just use my thought fossils to describe this painting, I'm going to do it I was trying to decide which direction, top to bottom or bottom to top, because all the fun stuff's sort of happening in the middle there. But I'll describe it from bottom to top. So it looks like a crowd of people all sort of in a circle. There's like a guy in some religious garb with what looks to be some sort of like gardening tool or something, like a rake, just like doing something on the ground. Not super important. You go up. And if you go all the way up, you see presumably Jesus.
Looks Jesus-like, yeah.
Jesus-like in a big circle in the sky, floating on a cloud. And then in between these two images, in between these two scenes, right? In Jesus in the sky, people on the ground in a circle. Also in the sky is what looks to be, to the layman, let's say, a horde or an army, perhaps, of alien spaceships descending on planet Earth, all flying together, presumably under Jesus's command.
Yeah, Jesus commands the Martians. It does look like something like he is ushering a fleet of ships from like Mars Attacks, the Tim Burton movie from the 90s.
Yes.
Which is a movie I adore and have not seen in way too long. And if I remember correctly, it actually has baby Jack Black in it.
Oh, whoa. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he plays like a soldier who gets killed in like the first like 20 minutes.
There you go, Jack Black.
But that's also the one that has the best few seconds of cinema ever, where the Capitol building gets blown up by the aliens. And then this old lady is just like, they blew up Congress. Ha!
Man, I went to the Museum of Pop Culture recently in Seattle, and they had some props from Mars Attacks, and it was very fun to look at how movies used to be made with physical things and not just computers.
Fun movie fact, so probably wrong. You know how all movies look like computer game bullshit today?
Yeah.
Apparently that has to do with the fact that because of the legacy of Hollywood, every aspect of making movie is done by people who are unionized, except for the people who make computer graphics, which means that they can be underpaid and overworked overworked to the end and back, which means that it is usually much cheaper to do CGI when a practical effect might take somebody who belongs to a union and you have to pay a certain amount of money to. And that's why all movies look like video games now.
And look, people, we're not old. Maybe we are. And we're not complaining about things these days, but maybe we are. But mostly we're complaining about people not being treated well. Yeah. Unionize and whatnot.
Plus it looks better. Remember, so I don't know where like the Dark Knight sits anymore in like the take zone, but
sure.
I still think often about how they flipped an entire goddamn semi-truck in that scene. And like,
they blew up an entire hospital. That was real. The hospital they blew up was to scale and they blew it up. That's a real thing. That's not a joke that I'm making. That's a real thing that Chris Nolan did. He blew up a hospital. I mean, it wasn't actually a hospital.
He blew up a hospital. It was active at the time. Then Christopher Nolan is an actual terrorist.
And Aaron Eckhart did not recover from what they did to his face, but he was in it, man. He was in it. No CGI required.
Oh yeah, I guess there was that. Oh, fuck. I forgot about the whole Two-Face part of it. Okay, that definitely.
That one, maybe they did some CGI
they touched him up a little bit.
But like, have you seen Aaron Eckhart in a movie since? Probably not.
Actually, the CGI is that all of the movies since then have been CGI his face back together. Because he actually dipped his face in gasoline and set it on fire for the movie because he's a method actor.
All actors are method actors these days because everyone loves that. And it's always very nice. And you never hear bad stories about it.
From what I hear on set is everyone loves working with method actors.
Everyone loves it. No complaints.
Anyways, back to this painting.
We can't devolve into a movie podcast. We did that so quickly.
Yeah.
We did that so quickly and for so long just now.
It's fine. This is what you guys like it, right? You guys like when we do it?
Yeah. Look, every frame a painting or something.
Every frame of painting. Now let's talk about this painting of the alien invasion, the Jesus-led alien invasion.
Yes.
Might be a Mormon thing. I don't know. Of Nostra Senora della Neve.
Yeah. So it looks like aliens are invading, but it's actually all of the Mormons going off to their own planets.
Yeah.
They're leaving.
Oh, no. I don't want to be too mean to the Mormons. People are already so mean to them on the internet.
All right. Just the Italians.
Yeah. So I Miracolo della Neve was a painting that came out in 1428 by Masolino de Panicale. And this has been cited as UFOs since the early 70s when it was reported in a Italian news article. And you're like, hey, this looks like aliens.
Yeah, that feels right to me.
Yeah, so I tried to look up what this is and I found a little story.
Okay. Ooh, I like it. Story time.
This is apparently a very interesting little bit. It's a 13th century legend about something that might have happened in the 4th century in Masolino. It's called Masolino de Panicale or Tommasio di Cristoforo Fini.
Fini. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, so apparently that guy painted something called The Miracle of the Snow.
Okay. So that's, the guy with the little, that I said had a garden tool. It's just a guy shoveling some snow.
Yeah. He painted it as the centerpiece of a triptych, which is sort of like if a triptych is basically like 3 pictures that are kind of held together. So this would be the center part of like a triptych.
Okay.
So for the Church of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome in 1428. And apparently this is how the legend goes. Pope Liberius was ordered by angels to construct a new church in the exact place where miraculous snowing would soon manifest. The day after, a strange substance similar to snow fell. This is how the ancient aliens people talk about it, by the way. A strange substance similar to snow fell from the sky on a warm day in August. The phenomenon was linked to a single zone of Rome in which was then constructed the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. What was the cause of this impossible snowing? Masolino from Panicale in his painting represents a detailed scene of the event with snow falling from a large and lengthened cloud, grayish, and with the shape of a cigar. Under this cloud are many other smaller clouds. Careful examination of these reveals that they do not seem like normal clouds.
No, they don't.
They are in fact all clearly delineated in their contours and not vaporous, and represented in identical pairs with only the upper portion illuminated, as are many flying saucers.
This is so silly.
Yeah. So that's an interesting way of describing it. So
okay.
Instead,
No, you go ahead. I wanted to break this down to point out how silly it is, but you continue.
So that's a very interesting way of describing it. So I decided to look up what the actual story says and see what kind of words they use. So this is the same story from the more directly translated source. In the morning, the inhabitants of Esquilin Hill got a strange surprise. During the night, snow had fallen, and a soft mantle of it covered the soil. With such a miracle, the Virgin Mary indicated to a noble called Giovanni and his wife that she wanted a shrine built there in her honor. For a long time, the old couple, who had no sons, had desired to employ their riches in a work that honored the Mother of God, and, to such an aim, prayed with fervor so great that she showed them the way to which they could fulfill their wish. The Virgin appeared to them in a dream, telling them to build a church dedicated to Mary in the place where the following morning would reveal that snow had fallen miraculously in the night. Astonished by the miracle, the couple went to Pope Liberius to tell him what happened, but the Pope had, during the night, dreamed the same thing. Liberius, followed by Giovanni and a crowd, went up the Esquilin Hill and found that the still intact snow marked the outline of the new church, which was soon constructed at the expense of Giovanni and his wife. So that's the story. That's the story of the miracle of the snow.
Oh, what are the odds that Mrs. Claus sent Jingle and Jangle to go convince Snow Miser to put some snow down in Southtown so that people would believe in Santa Claus again?
Well, the Clausometer needed to be refilled, right?
Right. Or else we would have a blue Christmas.
It's true.
Yeah.
So looking at this, you can see that there's a few details that have been massaged to sound a little bit more UFO-y, like
very
a
much
snow-like material.
Yeah, the original just
snow.
Yeah, the original's like, it was snow, and they're like, it was a snow-like material.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole bit where they describe, like, these are clearly not clouds, for they don't look to be vaporous or whatever. Like, that's just, I don't know, man. Someone just drew clouds and they're like thick. I don't know what you want. And they're like, and they're illuminated from the top, but not the bottom. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's what happens when the sun is out. Things are illuminated from the top and not the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is some of the alien claims here are a little silly to me.
Yeah. So they're clouds, not UFOs.
They're clouds.
It's stylized in a way that apparently was like less, like there was a lot of realism in the early 15th century in art. But this had less of it, but it is still obvious that they are clouds.
I will say this, there are like one, maybe two of them that really do look like what we would call a flying saucer. But the rest of them just look like lumps. Like it would almost be more convincing to say that they were floating rocks than to say that they were floating spaceships. Mm-hmm. Just because they don't look very uniform to me.
And now I don't want to, knock on any Catholics. Your faith and belief are your own. But I will add that it does seem like the miracle of the snow might have a few questions in it as well, even though I think it is a verified miracle according to Catholics. But the Basilica of Saint Maria Maggiore on the Esquilin Hill doesn't seem to have happened during the reign of Pope Liberius, but during the reign of Pope Sixtus III in the 5th century. And it was the first church dedicated to the Virgin Mary, officially defined as the Mother of God in Ephesus in 431 CE by the Third Ecumenical Council. But there's an interesting thing about the Esquilin Hill that is maybe something a little bit interesting, which is that apparently this was also the site of a temple to the goddess Juno, which was a Roman goddess of childhood or childbirth and light. And so they probably built a church on the same hill where the temple used to be in order to sort of kill the Roman, because this is still early enough that like they were still trying to deal with people who still believed in the Roman gods and stuff like that. And so you think about it, you put the Virgin Mary on top of the old goddess of childbirth, and you're sort of trying to, erase the pagan god from that place. And this happened a lot across Europe, where they would take, the sites or even the iconography associated with like different pagan symbols and sort of associate them, like the pitchfork with Neptune and other kind of cases like that. And that happens a lot. There's even a really fun one that showed, I guess, the first attempts to bring Christianity to the Norse, where they have there's this drawing of Jesus wielding a spear and also, I think, wielding Mjolnir.
Kick ass.
And it's like, of course, the Vikings would think of warrior Jesus.
Fight those sins, but not the sinners, just the sins.
Fight the sin, not the sinner. Yeah. But yeah, the Miracle of the Snow did get popular imagination. So there's actually a lot of paintings of the Miracle of the Snow. And there are a lot of churches that are dedicated to, quote, the Madonna of the Snow in Italy. And so this is another case of that. So it's not like this is weird or out of place.
No, it doesn't feel like it is. It feels like they're trying to it feels like alien conspiracy theorists or whatever are just trying to take something that just barely maybe looks like it could be flying saucers and are just like twisting everything to make it seem much more mysterious than it actually is.
Yeah, this is a thing looks like a thing, and also the idea that not only do we lack their cultural context, but they lack ours, which means that if he was painting this painting today, he might be like, maybe I should change these clouds because they kind of look more like UFOs than clouds. But
right.
But he doesn't know what a UFO is because we haven't invented those yet. So
yeah, they're definitely still, I think it's pretty obvious that they're still clouds. That being said, this next image that you have here, this looks the most like someone flying around in a spaceship, because there is very clearly multiple like people that look to be riding around or flying around in the sky in some sort of vehicle, spacecraft. I don't know. It's very cool. It's very convincing to me. And I can't wait to see how you could dare disprove this one.
And we will talk about that after this.
All right. I'm flying, much like these people in this painting. I'm flying by the seat of my pants.
Oh.
And I'm on the edge of that seat. And I need to know.
Yeah.
What's up with these paintings? What's up with these people flying around in ships in the sky?
So this painting, it's a crucifixion of Jesus, as you can see by the whole Jesus being pinned to the cross thing.
That's the boring part. Jesus on it. We've seen this before. What I see is this one of those triptychs that you were talking about? 3 paintings?
Possibly. I can't confirm that, but it definitely looks like it a little bit.
It looks like they're split up into thirds, but that could just be for whatever reason. Anyway, it looks like in the top right-hand corner and the top left-hand corner, it looks like in each corner, there's like one person in a spaceship. The person on the left in the sky is in like this bright orange, sort of fiery looking spaceship. And there are people in it. It's very clearly people. And then it's like it's looking ahead, like almost chasing this other person in the top right, who's in like a more silvery, sleek sort of spaceship.
Yeah, almost like a little crescent look to it.
Yeah, and it definitely, it's shiny. It's got like sparks, shiny sparks coming off of it. And it's like the person is looking behind them, like watching this person sort of catch up to them. And then like in the foreground, there's like Jesus and all these other people and angels and whatever. But like, what's up with these people in spaceships, man?
That is a good question. So this painting is, it's titled as just the Crucifixion of Jesus. It comes from the year 1350. We actually don't know who painted it, but this is
even more mysterious.
Yeah. This is currently sitting in a place called the Visoki Dekani Monastery in the country of Kosovo today. So like in Eastern Europe, former Yugoslavia.
Sure.
And yeah, you do see what looks like objects with quote unquote pilots in them.
Yes.
Something that looks like a comet, maybe.
It also does look like the people, at least one of them looks like they're like using their arms and hands to like almost steer in some capacity.
Yeah, it is pretty good looking in that sense. So there's a lot of discussion about what these might be, but a lot of people also believe that they do look quite a bit like spaceships, sort of like gives me King Pakal kind of vibes.
Yeah.
And there is like, it is a little weird, but it does seem that what I can find out is that art historians say that this is the sun and the moon, specifically because that there is some stuff from ancient mythology about like kind of like with like Helios and stuff like that of people piloting the moon and the sun across the sky, and that had become normal. And then it became sort of part of the artistic style. This would be like saying, like when we were talking about a few weeks ago with the battle over Nuremberg, that it's like there's a face in that sun. Somebody must be flying a spaceship there.
Right.
Like,
I see. Okay, so the one that's like this fiery orange, that's clearly the sun, right? And now that you say that the silver one is like the moon, I presume the moon, right? If the other one's the sun, this is the moon. I do see that part of the whole overall shape of it is like this crescent shape, like the moon would be sometimes. So like that also makes sense. And they are like traveling, like they travel across the sky. All right, I sort of see it, but boy, does this look like alien pilots.
And we see another case of that in another painting from the 17th century, which is the Svetoshovel Cathedral, which is a fresco in Mishketa in current day Georgia. Gosh, I don't know if we have any Georgian listeners to this podcast, but
how did we do?
Yeah,
here, I'll give it a try as well. Mishketa. That's my pronunciation. I'm only doing one. I'm not going to do it the second try.
You're the word photographer.
I'll describe this one. This is again Jesus being crucified. We get it. And I mean, there's people around. Is the interesting thing the red thing that looks like a jellyfish in the sky?
And the silver thing that also looks like a jellyfish that is on the other side.
I didn't even see that one. It sort of blended in. Yeah, so on either side of J-Man here, there in the sky looks like a sort of dome shape with like tendrils or like, you know, exhaust fumes or something coming off of them in like 3 spikes. One of them is red on the left side, and on the right side, one of them is like sort of silvery bluish.
So would it surprise you as that we get more east that some of the art styles converge with each other, and this is the exact same thing?
Okay, so this is just more sun and moon.
Yeah, it's a fairly common motif that showed up in a lot of these paintings.
That makes sense. I mean, they're even literally on this. They're like colored the same. They're each on the same sort of respective sides as the other painting.
Yes, and so the reason that you could say behind this is that the art is similar is because they're both sort of art that comes from the style of the Byzantine Empire. Okay, I don't know if you know about the Byzantine Empire at all.
I mean, it definitely sounds familiar, but like I'm not going to pretend I know all the intricacies of it or what it is.
Sure. So basically what it is that when Rome was collapsing, right? Some people would say like Rome fell in like, you know, the early first millennium, in the sort of 3-digit CE years. Some would say that it ended in 18 something with the Holy Roman Empire being overthrown by Napoleon. But there was, and this is sort of a part that doesn't get a whole lot of attention in our regular history classes, but there was a point where the Roman Empire cracked in half, specifically because of the Emperor Constantine, who claimed that he saw a religious vision of God telling him to build his empire in Constantinople, i.e.
Constantinople.
Yeah. So he split the empire in half, and the Roman Empire then ruled from out of what is modern day Istanbul. But then further, as like the sort of western and eastern half of the Roman Empire started to become like they started to drift apart culturally, the Eastern Roman Empire started to, was more Greek speaking. Western was still in like the Latin period. And then you also had a religious schism start to form between the two, which is sort of the beginning of the Catholic Church in the West and the Orthodox Church in the East. coast. But Kosovo and Georgia were either part or very close to the Byzantine Empire. And so you can kind of see, compared to the previous paintings we saw, that there's a distinct different style that sort of shows that more Greek Eastern Orthodox type style. I actually don't know if these are Catholic or Orthodox churches, but there is definitely this is sort of like Greek flavored Christian art here.
All right.
So again, we're talking about in a completely different artistic language, because now we're talking about devotional art based in the Byzantine Empire, where there's an entire different like approach to religious art in general. I know that the Byzantine Empire went through a lot of what are called iconoclasms, where the idea of depicting holy figures in art, and then also a lot of these are in various like states, because like, for example, Istanbul used to be like sort of the Vatican city of the Eastern Orthodox Church. But anyone who knows anything about what's going on now, like the sort of big church that Eastern Orthodoxy was based out of is now a mosque, because Istanbul became the headquarters of the Ottoman Empire, and it was conquered by the Turks, and all this is like in modern day Turkey. So there's like been a lot of religious change and everything like that.
Yeah, there's a song about it, right?
Yeah, like so this is like one of those little bits of fun history, is that like the region that makes up the majority of Turkey today, which is called Anatolia, used to have a lot of Greek-speaking people there, and there was until basically the end of World War I, where Greece and Turkey decided to essentially the Greeks kicked all the Turks out of Greece, and the Turks kicked all the Greeks out of Turkey, and they sort of had a big person exchange. Then they still there's a lot of animosity between Greece and Turkey today that has to do with like things like the island of Cyprus and all sorts of stuff like that. There was a war in the 70s, and there is still an unrecognized Turkish Republic of Cyprus that sort of splits the island in half and stuff.
There's a lot going on.
Geopolitical stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is, but basically like this part that is in modern day Turkey used to have like a lot of this like Greek Christian stuff. And honestly, like this shows a lot more religious strife than in a lot of cases there were, because for a lot of the Middle Ages, a lot of these Greek Orthodox Christians in the Byzantine Empire, but also in places like Lebanon and stuff like that, were fairly welcomed under Muslim rule. Oftentimes, if you were what were called people of the book, which is basically any Abrahamic religion under Islamic rulers, you just had to pay something called the jizya, which was like a tax. But in like Baghdad, the sort of big capital where like all of the art and stuff was collected, there was a whole lot of Christians who, like especially Byzantine Christians, who went there and debated like all of the Greek philosophers and all that kind of stuff, like Plato's Republic and all that kind of stuff was all translated into Arabic and stuff there and everything like that.
Debate bros.
Yeah. And so there was this really cool period of exchange where like Muslim and Zoroastrian and Christian and like all these different, and like even like as far like east as like Indian like Hindus and stuff like that, like we're bringing information all together to this like big Islamic empire, and it was called the Islamic Golden Age. But the reason I talk about that is because one of the interesting facts, since we're talking about the Renaissance, that kind of comes through here, is that one of the reasons that people think that the Renaissance happened is because when Osman the Great, when the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, conquered the Byzantine Empire, and they realized that this feels very iconic of the end of the Middle Ages. So Constantinople was always impossible to conquer because it had something called the Thesideran walls, which are like these big, thick stone masonry walls, right?
Yeah.
And they thought like, oh, they're the Turks could not possibly take our city. We're going to hold out forever. Until the walls were brought down by the Turks because they brought cannons.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah. And so like it just shows like how cannons kind of broke the meta, if you will, about medieval warfare, because castles don't really work much anymore.
No, that was a really eye-opening episode of Deadliest Warrior.
Yeah. But then when the Byzantine Empire fell, a whole lot of Greek Christians left the Byzantine Empire and went west into Europe. And so you had this like influx of all of these Greek Christians who brought, because in like the West, they had like burned all of the Greek stuff because it was like heretical knowledge. So like all of like, Plato's Republic and all those like famous works were all destroyed because they were, this is done by pagans. We can't accept this. But the Greeks did not have this kind of aversion. And they brought like, Plato's Republic translated from Arabic to Europe and like translated it into Italian and to Latin and like kind of started, restarted this like interest in classical stuff. And
that's awesome.
A little off topic, but I thought that was a cool.
I love it. I mean, I'm a sucker for some context. You know this about me.
Also, if you want to even go even more off the walls, that also feels like how that moment is very iconic of, the beginning of the end of the medieval period or the end of the, because sometimes people call like the fall of Constantinople like the end of the medieval period. But furthermore, after the fall of Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire became very huge and very powerful and was like probably one of the most powerful countries in like Eurasia, right? Like it was rivaled, if not was more powerful than any European power at that point. But that also meant that they had been blocking off all of the Middle Eastern trade routes that went to India and China, where all of the spices and silks and all that kind of stuff was coming from. And so everyone in Europe was like, well, I really like pepper and cinnamon and stuff like that. So we need to find,
of course,
a new way to circumvent the Ottoman Empire to go and get stuff. And they were like, we're going to look for any way. And so you have like the Portuguese were like, we're going to sail all the way around Africa and come all the way back up into the Indian Ocean to find India. And then the Spanish crown was like, the Spanish crown that had was hot off of finally pushing the last Muslim kingdom out of Spain and Granada was like, talk to a little guy by Christopher Columbus. It was like, I have an idea of sailing west to
little young Chris Colombo wanted to. I think if we go west, we're gonna end up right where we want to be.
Yeah, and then one of the most horrible things in human history happened. But
and then it turns out he wasn't a good person.
But you can see that like, this one moment can sort of be depicted as like, this is like, if you were to point at like one thing that could be like the end of the medieval period, that it would spur on all of that stuff is really interesting.
Absolutely. It's like seeing dominoes fall.
Yeah. I always think that's really cool. So back onto this art, like sort of in a bigger sense, like what are these things?
Oh, they're paintings, Tristan. Yeah. I didn't. We probably should have went over that like really early last episode if you were that confused. So they are when you have like colors and then you've got like a brush and then you've got a canvas and then you paint a little happy little tree.
Add little UFOs.
And Bob Ross was always adding UFOs to his work. No one knew.
Yeah. So so there's a couple things that are interesting to go on, which is that like not only do these paintings show shapes that look like flying saucers, and we have shapes that look like flying saucers, that might be something that's interesting to pick at. And one of the things I found that was interesting is that it might come from the common idea of just like a common idea of aesthetics and design. So like, because our spoiler alert for UFO believers, our concept of the UFO flying saucer was made in science fiction and was designed by designers who wanted to make something that looked cool, right? Looked good.
Yeah. It looked cool. It looked, for lack of a better word, it looked alien.
Mm-hmm. It looked alien. Now, take these Renaissance painters who are being commissioned by their patrons to depict this sort of alien like idea of like otherworldly creatures in heaven.
Yeah, this inhuman presence among them.
Yeah. So you can imagine that they're having the same thing and they're thinking in the same artistic style, that they might actually converge on some of the same shapes and ideas.
That makes sense. I mean, if the modern flying saucer didn't exist and it was some other shape, like if it was like the rolling trapezoid instead of the flying saucer, if it was the rolling trapezoid, that was the alien thing, we would be doing this exact same dance. People would be looking at all sorts of Renaissance paintings and medieval things, and they'd be like, do you see this little trapezoid over here? This little rounded little trapezoid over here? That's aliens.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
But so I do think that's interesting that we have similar ideas of style, and they were trying to depict the same idea, different ideas behind that idea, but they were trying to get the same feeling across and might have converged on some of the same shapes. And also that the people who are studying these and trying to find flying saucers in all these paintings are misinterpreting doing symbolism because they don't even realize that what they're looking at are symbols, because if you know anything about art history, there's a whole visual vocabulary that people, that has existed for centuries, even millennia, that art historians dedicate their entire life to decoding and analyzing and all that kind of things. It's like, it'd be like if we tried to explain Star Wars Kid to a Zoomer.
It would be like trying to explain what All My Apes Gone means
in like 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. How can you possibly tell someone what All My Apes Gone means if they don't have the context of all of that?
Yeah,
sentence?
You would need to explain a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And in the same case, that's basically what's happening in a lot of these cases, right? Like, there's a whole language of symbols that these artists are speaking in because it's contemporary to them in their period and their work, that then hundreds of years later, some person who's just looking for any flying saucer shaped thing in old paintings is coming in and is looking at these things, not really not understanding their own context, and then just butting in and being like, well, that thing looks like a thing and I don't understand things. And also there's another thing that's really important to point out, which is that there's a very different concept of what the role of an artist is in the past compared to today, because a lot of the people who are looking for UFOs assume that artists have these expensive paintings, that they have any sort of creative control over anything that they make whatsoever. Because like in the 15th century, they are not like, the way that art worked back then, there wasn't a case where like a 15th century painter saw a UFO and then would think, oh man, my creative drive, I'm going to go and paint this in my next work. Because that's not how art worked back then.
No, I mean, you even talked about it earlier. Like they had patrons. Patrons were paying them to be like,
they went to patreon.com/Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, if we had a Patreon, we would plug it right now, but we do not.
Yeah.
No, but like, it would like their artwork was basically commissioned, and they would like, that people would be asking them to do certain things, and yeah.
Yeah. So the subject and the execution, even like they would be micromanaged, would be done on these painters by like churches, nobles, rich people. So very powerful people who basically could sometimes hold power over like life and death and stuff like that. Were
just like my supporters over at patreon.com.
Yeah, exactly. So they were paying lots of money to get these painters to make these very specific things that they want. And they would not be happy if they went outside any of the established conventions, especially when you're talking about paintings that have to do with religious subjects, which you can imagine is very serious business in the Middle Ages.
It's not a thing you can just put your own spin on.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, so in many ways, artists were like workers who were paid to do things in a very specific way. And so
interesting.
One of the comparisons I found was they could no more insert flying saucers into their commissions than your lawyer could add jokes and personal commentary into your will.
That's true. That's fair.
And it would not only be bad, it could be like actually dangerous, because if you like editorialized, it would be scandalous. It would be considered an affront to your patron, and very often could lead to your execution.
Ooh, that's no good.
Yeah, so like you can imagine like that. So like that's a thing.
Thankfully, artists have a much better job. Their lives are much easier these days, as we talked about earlier.
Patreon.com.
VFX artists are living it up, and nothing's wrong with that or anything like that. Everything's great and wonderful for everyone in every way.
So then I guess the next question to kind of round it out is that this is obviously unwarranted. There's some superficial, I would say that there's obviously some superficial stuff that looks very striking, and I think that's very interesting. Yeah. But if you do even a moderately close examination of what's going on, it makes sense. And also, I point out, I imagine that if you're a Christian or if you're an art historian, seeing UFOs in ancient paintings is probably seen as a distortion of the meaning of that art, and probably the intention of its creators, who were, devout Christians themselves. And I imagine that Christians specifically would probably find it either somewhere between amusing and offensive to have people make unfounded suggestions that some of the greatest artistic expressions of their faith are in fact records of alien visitations.
And I mean, this just goes back to something we've talked about before with Ancient Aliens and religious stuff, where there's this literalism to it, where like they think, because the theory here would be that someone, like whoever, all these artists who painted these paintings literally saw aliens and they were like, I'm going to use my art to document this, rather than just being like, it's art though.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also
like,
not a photograph, right? Like it's stylistic
right,
and symbols.
It's not a photograph. It's a painting from an artist who is doing their artistic thing, where they're not trying to document something exactly how it is. They're doing something, putting some sort of visual poetry on it, if you will.
Art, if you will.
Yeah, art, if you will.
Yeah. And this also speaks to like one of the motivations behind this kind of work and like ancient alien stuff in general, which is that it's kind of interesting that sightings of UFOs do seem to only show up after the advent of science fiction. And that possibly the effort to look back so intently to find spaceships in old art could be that they're trying to find cases of UFOs existing before science fiction, because otherwise it makes them all look very silly.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that this marks that if you're going to be doing, say, history, art history, archaeology, all of the things that Ancient Aliens seems to delve upon, you might want to have some form of cultural competency in the subject that you're studying. And also like all the things about like stars and stuff like that, like medieval people also did see comets. They did see things like the Northern Lights. They also, like the kinds of things that are mistaken for UFOs today, like meteors, Northern Lights, marsh gas, you know, those things also existed back then, and they typically interpreted them as miracles.
Right. Some sort of religious thing or spiritual thing. Yeah, everyone's just putting their own sort of a cultural context on things. And ours right now, a lot of sci-fi.
In a sort of more poetic sense. In the past, it was a group of extremely devout religious people who were looking for signs that affirmed their faith.
Yeah.
In our current age, I think that in many ways, we are still racked existentially by the question of whether or not we're alone in the universe. And furthermore, we are sitting on the knife's edge on a lot of very existential threats to our civilization. And so I can imagine that there is a bit of a motivated reasoning to think that there is there is another side to this. There is that if you can see the people who have somehow gotten through climate change, who have gotten through energy crises, who have overcome all of the threats of nuclear war and developed, superluminal spaceships that can visit other planets, that is a little bit affirming to our possible future. And so maybe even the UFO sightings, much like the miracle sightings in the past, are done for similar motivations, if not the same reason.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice and very generous way of looking at it. And I think absolutely there are parts of it. I mean, like, as much as I want to be like cynical and be like, but also the reason they're doing it is because it sells books and TV shows and it gets lots of attention. But like, why is it even getting that attention? I think it's because of what you're talking about. I think a lot of people feel are questioning our place, not only just in the world, but in the entire universe. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or a hopeful thing or a scary thing or any sort of mix of everything. I think it aims to try and put some kind of perspective on existence as a whole.
Yeah, like take a look at like when it would be like a real extraterrestrial intelligence. Like I imagine, like you and I there are a few things about the human condition that like I'm genuinely worried that like whether or not we're going to overcome before we destroy ourselves. Yeah. And if we were to see concrete proof that one other species has done that, that would be very reassuring.
I think so. Yeah.
And you could see like the UFO phenomenon not only arose with the advent of science fiction, but also when there was growing anxieties about nuclear destruction and all that kind of stuff, which I think also says a lot about, our anxieties and such.
And now Chris Nolan's going to make a movie about nuclear anxieties. And that's great. Good timing, Chris. Love it.
But yeah, that's in a nutshell. That is the paintings episode. So this is gonna be a short one. We did another hour long.
We did another hour. Thank you so much for listening to this word painting.
Oh,
can I say that? How's that?
Yeah.
Let me put that spin on it. All of the paintings that we talked about, if you want to get a visual look at them, we're gonna tweet them out on our Twitter page at probsnotaliens. You can go follow us there. Tristan and I also make stuff outside of this podcast. We don't just exist here in front of microphones. We exist in the same spaces in front of the same microphones, but for other reasons, right? Tristan, what do you do?
I make a YouTube channel. I make videos on a YouTube channel called Step Back, where I talk about history, usually trying to take something that's going on in the world right now and try to get you to understand it through the deeper context of everything that's going on these days. And it seems people like it. I got a little play button. So at least a few people. I found out the other day that that there are only 50,000 people in the United States that have play buttons.
That's wild to me.
So like every time I'm like, oh, like I haven't accomplished anything, I'm like 50,000 people in America, a country that has 10 times my population have it. So like in Canada, it's like there's probably only like 5,000 people who have them, and I'm like, that's okay.
Oh,
maybe I did accomplish a little bit of something.
Maybe you're doing great. I think you're doing great.
Scott, you are a very successful YouTuber as well.
Absolutely. I run a YouTube channel called Step Back, where you can go to and subscribe. It's a great YouTube channel that you can go to and get and learn about history and how it sort of reflects our modern world. You can go check that out. It's at youtube.com/stepback. Is there more to it? I don't know the URL.
I was Nerdsync?
youtube.com/Tristan's channel. Step Back. That's where you can go to find good stuff.
Yeah.
Is it my stuff? I don't know. Is it good stuff? Yes. Step Back on YouTube. That's where you can go to find it.
Don't you have a Nerdsync thing?
I do. I have a YouTube channel called Nerdsync. I make video essays about comics and superheroes. It's cartoons and whatever. You get it.
It's good stuff. You are good. You're good at your.
I know.
Your videos are pretty. They're well written.
Let me shout out my friend for a second. All right.
You said in one of your videos that every single call you do just ends with people complimenting each other, and it's like, yeah,
it's true. Links to everything will be in the description of the show notes. You can also leave reviews of this podcast. That would be great. I would love it if you did that. Because that would make me feel really good.
Scott?
Tristan, have you done it yet, Tristan? Have you?
I don't even think I have an Apple account.
Well, there you go. You can leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. I think it's the only place you can do it. But I don't know. Maybe you can just write a review on a sticky note and leave it out in public somewhere. That could be fun.
Yeah, do that.
I like that idea. And then take a picture of it and send it to us at probsnotaliens on Twitter. Yeah. That'd be great. Because that's another way. That's a different way of telling people about the show. And telling people about the show is super important, isn't it?
Yes. It is basically what we need to. There's no recommendation algorithms for podcasts, so word of mouth is really how we spread. Also, before we break, I also remembered at the very last minute, very embarrassingly, that one of the listeners to this show is my very good friend Nicole. Hi, Nicole, who has a master's degree in art history. Hi, Nicole. I hope I did okay. Please tell me if I did all right.
Sorry we didn't ask you to be on either of the 2 episodes we did about art.
She's really cool, but I know that she's a listener to the podcast. So hi, Nicole. Hope I did okay.
Hi, Nicole. Were my jokes funny?
Yeah. Hope you and Hobbs, your dog, are doing all right. And
that's a good
Ozzy,
name.
Your cat, and Mark, your
another good name.
Fiance.
That's a decent name as well. Not as good as the other 2, but I like it.
But yes, tell your friends, like my friend Nicole.
Yeah, and if you're trying to tell your friends, if you're trying to tell Nicole about the podcast that she already listens to, then you can do that at probsnotaliens.com. That's where you can send people to find all the links to our show on Apple and Spotify and Google and things. It's everywhere. We're everywhere. We're like aliens. We're invading.
Yeah, we are everywhere.
And we're aliens led by the power of Jesus Christ.
So that's all for this week. But until next time, my friends, the truth is out there.
what was that? I don't know.
Mars Attacks.
Oh, you're right. Can you do that again, but have also an Italian accent?